Are you ready?
I think so.
You'll do great.
Okay.
Let's go. Your company has been bleeding for 3/4. My proposal doesn't save you, it resurrects you. Reject it, that is your right.
Say that again. The room didn't freeze because of the words. It froze because of the voice that carried them. Low, steady, the kind of voice that had already decided what happened next, and was simply offering one last chance to avoid it. Park Juno opened his mouth. The glass hit the marble floor before he got a single word out. Amara hadn't raised her voice, hadn't stood, hadn't even uncrossed her legs. She had simply picked up the glass, looked at him, and let it go, like releasing something she no longer needed. The shatter echoed across the 42nd floor boardroom in Gangnam, and every man at that table felt it in their chest. I said, Park Juno's voice was tighter now, less comfortable in itself, that the board will not accept a proposal from someone who cannot even speak Korean fluently. It is not personal. It is business. Amara stood slowly. The way mountains don't move, but somehow you feel them shift. Mr. Park. She placed both hands flat on the table. I don't need to speak Korean fluently. I need you to understand English. And right now I'm not sure you do. Nobody laughed. One man looked at his folder like it had suddenly become very interesting. Your company has been bleeding for 3/4. She slid a document across the table without looking at it. My proposal doesn't save you. It resurrects you. She straightened. Reject it. That is your right. But when you are filing for bankruptcy in 8 months, remember this room. Remember this glass. And remember that I gave you a choice. She walked out. Her heels didn't rush. They never did. Outside in the corridor, a small hand found hers immediately. Mommy, you broke a glass. Dennis looked up at her with eyes that were too old for his face. 5 years old with the gaze of someone who had been watching the world longer than that. I did, she said. Was it necessary? She looked down at him. Yes. He considered this with the seriousness of a scholar. Okay. That was Dennis. He never questioned her judgment. He interrogated her reasoning, and when it satisfied him, he released it completely. Most adults never reached that level of peace. They walked to the elevator together. Her assistant Jisoo fell into step behind them, already pulling up the next meeting. The gala confirmation came in. Jisoo said carefully, They want to announce everything. Your name, your companies, your... I know what they want to announce. Ma'am. Jisoo lowered her voice. Once it's public, everyone will know who you are. Every boardroom, every enemy, every person, whoever. Jisoo. Yes. Confirm it. The elevator doors opened. They stepped in. The doors closed behind them like a curtain dropping on the first act. Dennis tugged her hand. What will they announce? That mommy exists. He frowned. People already know you exist. Not the right people. She looked down at him, and something moved behind her eyes. Not fear. Something that had survived fear and kept walking. But they will. You felt that, didn't you? Comment one word that describes Amara right now. The man they called Quan J1 did not do galas. Did not do cameras, dinners, press events, or any room where people smiled at things they didn't mean. He moved through Seoul the way a current moves through deep water. You only felt him after he had already passed through you. 41 years old. Never lost a negotiation. Never lost anything he decided to keep. He was standing in the private parking structure beneath Han River Plaza, phone to his ear, 2 bodyguards at a respectful distance, when Dennis walked up to him. Not ran, not wandered, walked, with direction, like he had somewhere specific to be, and this was it. Both bodyguards reached for their jackets at the same moment. Quan raised one finger. They stopped. The boy was looking up at him with those eyes. Calm, assessing, unbothered by what he was looking at. Your shoes are very clean, Dennis said. My mommy says you can tell everything about a person from their shoes. Quan looked down at his shoes, then back at the boy. Where is your mother? On the phone. She's always on the phone. Dennis tilted his head. Are you important? The bodyguards exchanged a glance that said they had never in their lives witnessed this conversation happening. Some people think so, Quan said. Do you think so? Something moved across Quan's face. Not quite a smile. The place where a smile might eventually live if it was ever given permission. Not always, he said. Dennis nodded like this was the correct answer. He sat down on the concrete barrier beside Quan's car without being invited. I don't have a father, he said. Mommy says I don't need one, but I think she says that so I don't feel sad. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of something that had no easy word for it. She sounds smart, Quan said. She's the smartest person alive. Pure fact. Zero hesitation. But smart people can still be wrong about small things. Quan crouched to the boy's level. His bodyguards would whisper about this moment for a long time. Quan J1 crouched for no one. What is your name? Dennis. What's yours? Quan J1. Dennis tried the syllables carefully, like he was learning a new theorem. J1. He nodded. I'll call you that. Most people call me something else. What do most people call you? Quan looked at him steadily. Something they regret. Dennis thought about this. I won't call you that then. Amara appeared at the entrance of the parking structure. Her eyes found Dennis in under 2 seconds, then moved to the man beside him, and everything about her changed without visibly changing. She didn't tense, didn't reach, didn't rush. She simply became more still, more present, like a decision that had already been made. She walked toward them at the same pace she walked everywhere. Quan stood, tall man, not a small woman. They looked at each other across 4 feet of concrete, and something passed between them that neither of them would name out loud. Not yet. My son bothering you? No. His eyes didn't move from her face. He is remarkable. I know. You are Amara Osei. Not a question. Something crossed her eyes fast as a blink. Gone before it fully arrived. You say my name like you already knew it, she said. I did. A pause. I know most things that matter in this city. Then you know I'm not someone you approach casually. Neither am I. Dennis looked between them the way he studied problems. Back and forth. Processing. You two are the same, he said simply. Neither of them answered. Because neither of them could argue with a 5-year-old who was almost certainly right. The night of the gala arrived the way important nights always do. Quietly. Like it knew what it was carrying. Amara stood in front of the mirror in her suite at the Shilla Hotel and looked at herself for exactly 30 seconds. No longer. She had learned a long time ago that mirrors were liars if you stood in front of them too long. They started telling you stories about yourself that had nothing to do with where you were going. She was wearing black. She was always wearing black. Not because it was safe. Because it was final. Dennis sat on the edge of the bed, behind her in his small suit, watching her with those eyes. Are you nervous? He asked. No. Your jaw is doing the thing. She turned from the mirror. What thing? He pointed at his own jaw. The tight thing. You do it when you're preparing for something. She looked at her son for a long moment. 5 years old. Seeing everything. I'm not nervous, she said again. I'm ready. Those are different things. Dennis stood and walked to her. He straightened the bracelet on her wrist with small, careful fingers. I'll be there, he said. In the back with Jisoo. But I'll be there. Something moved through her chest. Warm and sharp at the same time. I know, she said softly. He looked up at her. They're going to be shocked. Yes. Good. He nodded firmly. They should be. She almost smiled. Almost. The grand ballroom of the Lotte World Tower held 400 people that night. Korea's most powerful. Executives, politicians, investors, people whose names moved markets when they whispered. They had come for the annual Global Commerce Gala dressed in the confidence of people who believed they already knew every important name in the room. They were wrong. Quan J1 stood near the far wall with a glass he hadn't touched. He had come because Amara had told him to. That was the only reason he went anywhere anymore. He didn't examine that fact too closely. His second in command, a lean, sharp-eyed man named Seo, leaned close. You're sure about tonight? I'm sure about very little, Quan said. But yes, tonight. Seo followed his gaze across the room. When they find out who she is. They will find out who she is in approximately. Quan checked his watch. 11 minutes. What happens after that is up to them. And if it goes wrong, Quan looked at him flatly. It won't. He said it the way Amara walked. Like the alternative wasn't a real option. 400 people in that room. Not one of them knew what was coming. Comment if you already feel it. The MC took the stage at 9 o'clock precisely. He was a polished man, practiced smile, the kind of voice built for announcements. He welcomed the room, thanked the sponsors, said the things these events always said. And then he paused. Tonight we have the privilege of introducing someone who has, for the past 11 years, operated as the architect behind one of the most quietly powerful business networks in the world. He looked down at his card like he was confirming he was reading it correctly. With holdings across South Korea, the United States, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, employing over 40,000 people globally. A woman who has never once stood in a spotlight she didn't build herself. The room was already shifting, chairs turning, glasses lowering. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder, brain, and master behind the Osei Global Group. He looked up. Amara Osei. She walked out from the left side of the stage. The silence that fell over that ballroom was not polite silence. It was not the silence of people being respectful. It was the silence of 400 powerful people having the ground move under them simultaneously. She was not what they expected. She was never what anyone expected. A black African woman in a black dress walking across a Korean stage like she had designed the stage herself. Which in every way that mattered, she had. Park Juno was in the third row. His face went the color of old paper. She reached the podium. She looked out at 400 frozen faces, and she did not smile triumphantly. She did not gloat. She simply stood there and let the truth of her presence do what it had always done. Fill every room it entered. "Good evening," she said. "I'll be brief." In the back of the ballroom, Dennis stood on his chair so he could see over the heads of the adults. Jisoo put a hand out to steady him. He didn't need steadying. He watched his mother at that podium, and his small face was completely calm. "That's my mommy," he said to no one in particular. A woman nearby heard him and looked down, then looked back up at the stage, then back at the boy. Dennis didn't notice. He was too busy watching her exist. Quan watched from the wall. He watched the room react, watched the calculations happening behind powerful eyes, watched people rearranging everything they thought they knew. His phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Something made him look again. The message was 4 words. "She has a past." Quan's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened around the phone slowly. He typed back 1 word. "Who is this?" 3 seconds passed. Someone who knew her before Seoul, before the money, before the boy. Tell her Dakar remembers. Quan looked up at the stage. Amara was still speaking, voice steady. The room still held in her orbit. She had no idea. He looked back at his phone. Then he looked toward the back of the room and found Dennis standing on his chair, watching his mother with complete faith in his eyes. Quan's jaw set. He typed 1 more message to CO across the room. "Find out who sent from this number. Now, before she leaves this building." Something just woke up in Dakar, and it's been waiting 11 years. Stay tuned. After the applause, after the handshakes, after the frozen faces thawed into practiced smiles and congratulations that tasted like they cost something, Amara found a quiet corridor outside the ballroom and stood in it alone. Just for a moment. She pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes and breathed. In, out, in. She had done it. 11 years of building in the dark, and she had stepped into the light on her own terms. Nobody had pushed her. Nobody had pulled her. She had chosen this moment the way she chose everything. Deliberately. She opened her eyes. Quan was standing at the end of the corridor. She didn't startle. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough." He walked toward her slowly. His face was doing something she hadn't seen it do before. Something careful. "You were extraordinary tonight." "I know." She pushed off the wall. "What's wrong?" Not a question. She read him the way Dennis read rooms. He held out his phone. She looked at the screen. Read the message once. Her face didn't collapse. Nothing about Amara Osei collapsed. But something behind her eyes went very quiet in the way that meant it was actually very loud. Dakar, she said. The word came out flat as stone. You know what it means. Yes. Amara. His voice dropped. Who knows about Dennis from before? The question landed in the corridor between them, and neither of them moved. And from around the corner came the sound of small feet. Dennis appeared, Jisoo hurrying behind him apologetically. He looked at his mother's face, then at Quan's, then back at his mother. What happened? He asked. Amara looked at her son, this boy she had carried through every hard year, every mocked year, every silent year. This boy who was the only reason any of it had ever mattered. She crossed to him, crouched to his level, held his face in her hands. Nothing you need to worry about tonight, she said. Dennis looked at her with those eyes. But tomorrow? She looked at him for a long moment. Tomorrow, she said quietly. Mommy handles it. This story continues. The past has a name. The boy has a target. And the most feared man in Seoul just chose a side. Like and share if Amara already has your whole heart, because this story is only just beginning.